even the feet on the ventral image. Now, when you look at the shroud a little closer, you'll also see a number of stains. When you look at the back side of the man, the dorsal side of the man, there you see something really amazing. There are a lot of markings across the back. Now, if you look closely, you'll find these extend all the way down past the buttocks to the back of the legs. And even on the front or ventral view, you'll find many of these, because these are dumbbell-shaped markings, scourge wounds from a Roman flagrum. And a Roman flagrum had 3 thongs, leather usually, and at the end of each, a dumbbell-shaped lead or bone weight. And these are the marks that we see on the Shroud of Turin. We see dumbbell-shaped bruises, many of them that drew blood, actually broke the skin, and these cover the man's body, not just the back where they're predominant, but also many came around the front, because as the scourger moved a little closer, his whip would then wrap around the front of the body and leave markings on the front of the body as well. Now, if we look at the face of the man of the shroud, we see blood stains on the forehead. And if we go further, we see blood stains in the hair. If you look directly near his heart is the darkest blood stain, which we call the spear wound blood stain, that appears on the shroud. And interestingly enough, although you can't see it with the naked eye, when you photograph this area with UV fluorescence photography, you see a large serum stain, invisible to normal lighting, but visible there on the shroud with UV fluorescence photography. As you come down the shroud and look again at the hands, you'll see blood stains near the wrists of the man of the shroud. Now, this would be the crucifixion wound from where the hands were nailed to the cross, and unlike all medieval and Renaissance art, which always depicts the nailing of the hands through the palms themselves, this shows an exit wound further up the wrist and would have been the correct exit wound for the nailing through the wrists, because the Romans did this all the time, and they knew very well where to nail the hands so they wouldn't come loose, and in the middle of the palm is not the place to do that, closer to the wrist. So unlike all medieval and Renaissance art, the shroud shows it forensically accurate in the wrist. Now, if you come down and look at the feet, you'll also see at the feet blood stains. Now, there's some argument as to whether both feet were individually nailed or whether one foot was nailed over the other. We cannot tell this from the blood stains on the shroud. So it is impossible for us to make that conclusion, draw that conclusion from the Shroud of Turin.
The researchers discovered that if the shroud was a fake, it must have been created by an artist with a comprehensive understanding of the forensics of crucifixion. Something that virtually no other artists of that period have demonstrated. But there was more. So the bloodstains on the shroud clearly correspond to the wounds of a man who has been whipped and scourged before being crucified. Why is this important? Well, because the Romans didn't usually treat prisoners this way before an execution. But we know from the Gospels that Pontius Pilate was very uncomfortable with the idea of killing Jesus, who in his eyes had committed no crime.
So Pilate went outside to them and asked,
"What do you accuse this man of?"
"We would not have brought him to you if he had not committed a crime."
"Then you yourselves take him and try him according to your own law."
"We are not allowed to put anyone to death."
This happened in order to make come true what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he would die. Then Pilate went back outside to the people and said to them,
I cannot find any reason to condemn him, but...
So Pilate had Jesus whipped and scourged instead to try to pacify the Jewish authorities and save Jesus from execution.
The soldiers made a crown out of thorny branches and put it on his head. Then they put a purple robe on him and came to him and said, Long live the King of the Jews. And they went up and slapped him.
Look, I will bring him out here to you to let you see that I cannot find any reason to condemn him. Look, here is the man.
So Jesus was one of the few people to have been treated this way before being crucified, and therefore one of the few people to whom the Shroud of Turin could possibly belong.
You take him then and crucify him. I find no reason to condemn him.
We have a law that says he ought to die because he claimed to be the Son of God.
And what of the crown of thorns mentioned by the Gospels?
We have stains on the shroud, on the head, as if from a cap or crown of thorns. So once again, everything about the Shroud of Turin, all of the bloodstains, all of these markings are accurate to the gospel account of what was done to Jesus when he was scourged, beaten, and if you look at the man's face, once again I should mention, if you look at the face, look at the bruised cheekbones, one more swollen than the other, but both rather swollen. So this man had been beaten in the face, he had been scourged, he had been then crucified, and then he was speared in the side. And what we have here is an accurate depiction, forensically accurate, of a crucified man, exactly as the gospel accounts of Jesus.
Here, you can watch the film with the most up-to-date evidence on the most important event in the history of mankind. We are in the last days. Now the scoffers have been and gone. It is time. Discover the truth here for free. Here you can learn what scientists have now discovered. Sit down and fasten your seatbelts. What I am going to tell you is that according to scientists, there is absolute proof that the shroud could not be a forgery. Here you will learn scientists claimed that the corner from which the radiocarbon sample had been taken was in fact a rewoven, patched or repaired corner. You will also learn about Marino and Sue Benford's brilliant piece of detective work. They found clear indications of a discreet repair to the shroud. Here you will learn about Ray Rogers, who was an explosive research expert and thermal analyst. He discovered madder, root dye and gum on the fibres of the shroud. This is clear evidence of the careful mending of the shroud that was intended to be imperceptible and of a thread indicating a medieval repair. Here you will learn about Peter Schumacher, the inventor of the NASA VP8 image analyzer, describing the discovery of the 3D image. He states, "I had never heard of the Shroud of Turin before that moment. I had no idea what I was looking at. However, the results were unlike anything I have ever seen." Which leads us to one final incredible piece of the scientific puzzle. The VP8 image analyzer is a computer that scientists use to take topographical maps of the moon and other things. It analyses light and dark areas of an image to determine the three-dimensional qualities of the object in the image. So, for example, it can tell us how deep the craters are on the moon. The VP8 analyzer needs photographs to be taken in a particular way in order to be accurate. A normal photograph fed into the machine will just display a jumbled mess of light and dark patches, because the light and dark areas of a regular photograph have little to do with how far away the subject is. Well, just out of curiosity, a group of scientists at the Los Alamos National Laboratories fed a photograph of the shroud through a VP8 image analyzer. This is what they saw. The topographical image of the shroud created by the VP8 computer shows very clearly the image of a man in 3 dimensions. The image is darker where his body would have touched the cloth directly, like his nose, and fainter where it would have been further away, like his neck. In fact, the VP8 map of the shroud shows the image of the man more clearly than ever before, and in doing so proves once and for all that the Shroud of Turin cannot possibly have been made using photographic methods. In fact, this discovery convinced the scientists at Los Alamos that the image on the shroud must have been formed by the cloth being draped over a real human being. The Shroud of Turin is a truly unique artefact, a 3-dimensional image on a 2-dimensional piece of cloth. This in itself is something of a miracle. Order your free DVD now at www.realdiscoveries.org. Join us in part 2, where we will look at more buried treasures of God.